The bank manager's face went pale when he pulled up my credit report, and I knew something was catastrophically wrong. I'd been sitting in that sterile office for what felt like hours, watching him type and click, type and click. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My hands gripped the armrests of the cheap plastic chair hard enough to leave marks. I'd come in for something simple, a basic personal loan to fix my roof before the next storm season hit Florida. At 67, I didn't have many expenses, just my little house and the garden I'd spent 30 years building. This should have been easy. "Mrs. Patterson," he said slowly, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "according to this, you've had 17 active credit accounts since 2022. My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I have one credit card. One. The same one I've had for 20 years. He turned the monitor toward me. Names of stores I'd never shopped at. Credit limits I'd never requested. Balances that made my pension check look like pocket change. Missed payments spanning 3 years. Collections notices. Late fees piling on late fees. "I don't understand," I whispered, but even as the words left my mouth, a cold certainty settled over me. He clicked through another screen. "The applications all came from your address, same social security number, same date of birth." I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the tile floor. "I need copies of everything, right now." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking as I flipped through 40 pages of financial devastation. My phone buzzed. Mom calling. I stared at her name on the screen. She'd been living with me for 4 years now, ever since Dad passed. I'd opened my home, rearranged my entire life, turned my craft room into her bedroom. And somewhere in those 4 years, she'd opened my mail, stolen my information, and destroyed the financial security I'd spent decades building. I answered, "We need to talk, now." "Oh, honey, I'm at Bridge Club. Can it wait?" "Get home immediately." I hung up before she could respond and drove home in a blur. My hands wouldn't stop trembling on the steering wheel. The neat suburban streets of my neighborhood blurred past. Mrs. Chen waving from her garden. The Henderson kids playing basketball. Everything looked so normal, so untouched, while my entire world was collapsing. Mom's car pulled into the driveway 15 minutes after I got home. I was sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out like evidence at a crime scene. She walked in carrying her designer purse, the one I'd always wondered how she afforded on her tiny retirement income. "What's so urgent?" she asked, setting her keys on the counter. I slid the credit report across the table. "Explain this." She barely glanced at it, didn't even pick it up, just looked at the top page and shrugged. Actually shrugged. "Oh, that." "Oh, that?" My voice cracked. "Mom, you destroyed my credit score. You opened accounts in my name. Do you understand what you've done?" She pulled out a chair and sat down like we were discussing grocery lists. "Linda, you're being dramatic. It's not like you were using your credit for anything. You have your house already. You're retired. What do you need good credit for?" The casualness of it hit me harder than any shouting match could have. She genuinely didn't see the problem. "I need it to live," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, "to get loans, to have financial security, to not be seen as a criminal risk everywhere I go." "Well, I needed things too." She crossed her arms. "My car needed repairs. I wanted to update my wardrobe. You have this big house and barely spend anything on yourself. I figured you could spare it." "Spare it? You stole from me." "I borrowed your information. There's a difference." I stood up, pressing my palms flat against the table to stop them from shaking. "When exactly were you planning to tell me? Or were you just going to let me figure it out when I couldn't get a mortgage, or a car, loan, or anything else for the rest of my life?" She waved her hand dismissively. "You're fine. You have everything you need." "I have everything I need? Mom, the bank just rejected me for a $5,000 loan to fix my roof. My roof, the one over both our heads." That got a flicker of reaction, but not the one I expected. Well, maybe if you'd been more generous with me, I wouldn't have needed to do this. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Get out. She blinked. What? Get out of my house. Now. Linda, don't be ridiculous. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. I walked to the doorway, blocking her path to the rest of the house. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. That's what the law says. 30 days. And then you're gone. Her face shifted through several expressions. Shock, indignation, and finally settling on cold anger. You'd throw your own mother out over some numbers on a screen? You stole my identity. You committed fraud. You destroyed something that took me 50 years to build. My voice was steadier now, fueled by a rage so pure, it felt like clarity. And you don't even think you did anything wrong. She grabbed her purse. Fine, but don't come crying. To me, when you realize how lonely you'll be without family. You stopped being family the moment you decided I was just a resource to exploit. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood there for a long moment, listening to her car peel out of the driveway before my legs out, and I sank into the nearest chair. The silence of the house pressed in around me. Over the next week, I filed police reports, fraud claims, and started the nightmare process of proving I hadn't opened those accounts. Every phone call was a new humiliation. Every form required documentation I barely understood. I'd been a teacher for 40 years, retired early to care for Dad, and suddenly I was drowning in legal jargon and credit bureau procedures. Mom stayed with my sister Carol in Miami. Carol called me 3 times a day, furious. How could you do this to her? Carol demanded on day 4. She's your mother. Did she tell you what she did? She said you had a disagreement about money. Linda, she's 79 years old. You can't just kick her out. I was sitting at my computer, working through another dispute form. Carol, she stole my identity and ruined my credit. This isn't a disagreement. This is fraud. Oh, you're being dramatic. Mom wouldn't do that. I have the paperwork right here. 17 accounts, 3 years of missed payments. Do you want me to email you copies? Silence. Then, well, what did you expect her to do? You know her retirement income is barely enough to survive on. The logic was so twisted, it took me a moment to respond. So she should steal from me instead? She raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. You owe her. I gave her a home for 4 years, Carol. I cooked her meals, drove her to appointments, rearranged my entire life. And she thanked me by committing identity theft. Carol's voice went ice cold. If you don't let her come back, don't expect me to help you when you're old and alone. She hung up. I stared at my phone, waiting to feel sad or hurt, but there was just a hollow numbness where those emotions should have been. My son Michael called that evening. He lived in Seattle with his wife and 2 kids. We talked maybe once a month. Aunt Carol says you kicked Grandma out? I explained everything again, slower this time, hoping he'd understand. Mom, that's pretty messed up. Relief washed over me. Thank you. I thought I was going crazy. Carol keeps acting like I'm the villain here. No, I mean, it's messed up that you'd turn on family like that. Grandma probably just made a mistake. The relief evaporated. Michael, this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate, repeated fraud over 3 years. Yeah, but family forgives family. That's what you always taught me. There's a difference between forgiveness and being a doormat. Is there, though? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're choosing money over your own mother. His voice had that self-righteous tone he'd perfected in his 20s. What would Dad say? The invocation of his father, my late husband, made my vision blur red. Your father would say that actions have consequences. He'd say that love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Abuse? Jesus, Mom, you sound unhinged. Maybe Grandma was right to handle things herself if you're this unreasonable. Goodbye, Michael. I hung up before he could respond and turned off my phone. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. I worked through the fraud claims during the day, methodical and numb. The credit bureaus required police reports, notarized statements, proof of identity. I spent hours on hold, navigating phone trees, explaining my situation to representatives who'd clearly heard every scam story in the book. Some were sympathetic, most were skeptical. Ma'am, you understand that filing false fraud claims is a crime? One particularly hostile representative informed me. I understand that my own mother stealing my identity is also a crime, I shot back. The evenings were worse. The house felt too big, too quiet. I'd catch myself setting 2 plates for dinner, or calling out to ask if Mom wanted tea. 4 years of habits don't disappear overnight. Carol kept calling from different numbers after I blocked her. She left voicemails ranging from pleading to threatening. I deleted them without listening past the first few seconds. My neighbor Sarah was the only person who seemed to get it. She came over with casserole on day 12, let herself in through the back door like she'd been doing for years. Heard about what happened, she said simply, setting the dish on my counter. I burst into tears. Just completely fell apart, right there in my kitchen, while this woman I'd known for a decade held me and let me ugly cry into her shoulder. Everyone thinks I'm a monster, I sobbed. My sister, my son, probably half the bridge club by now. Then everyone's wrong. Sarah pulled back and looked me square in the face. What she did was unforgivable. You know that, right? But she's my mother. So, that doesn't give her a free pass to ruin your life. Sarah steered me to a chair. My sister pulled something similar on our dad. Credit cards in his name, forged checks, the works. He tried to protect her, didn't press charges, just wanted to handle it quietly. You know what happened? She did it again. And again. Nearly lost his house. Before he finally cut her off. What if I'm making a mistake? The only mistake would be letting her back in. Sarah squeezed my hand. Linda, you're not responsible for fixing her. You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even if they gave birth to you. I nodded, wiping my face with a tissue. The fraud claims are going through, slowly, but I still need to rebuild my credit from nothing. At 67. You'll do it. You're tougher than you think. After she left, I sat with those words. Tougher than I think. Was I? I'd spent my whole life being accommodating, the good daughter, the supportive wife, the patient teacher, the understanding mother. When had I last fought for myself? Day 16, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Patterson? This is Detective Rodriguez from the Fraud Division. I wanted to update you on your case. My heart hammered. Yes? We've reviewed your documentation. The evidence is pretty clear-cut. We'll be moving forward with charges against your mother for identity theft and fraud. Charges? Criminal charges? Yes, ma'am. Given the extent and duration of the fraud, this is beyond civil court. She's looking at potential jail time. The room spun. How much time? Could be anywhere from probation to 5 years, depending on the judge and her criminal history. Does she have any priors? No, nothing. She's never even had a speeding ticket. Well, that'll work in her favor. But Mrs. Patterson, you should know that your family will likely be contacted. This might get uncomfortable. Uncomfortable felt like the understatement of the century. The detective's call lit a fuse. Within hours, my phone exploded with messages. Carol left a screaming voicemail about how I was sending Mom to prison. Michael's wife texted that I was dead to them. Even people I barely knew from church started weighing in, most of them condemning me for my cruelty. Only a handful of people understood. Sarah, my old teaching colleague Janet, my friend Ruth from book club. They formed a tiny circle of sanity in the chaos. "They're all enabling her," Ruth said when she came over for coffee. "Classic narcissist pattern. She positions herself as the victim, and everyone rallies around her, while you're made out to be the villain." "I just wanted her to acknowledge what she did," I said quietly. "Just once, I wanted her to say she was sorry and meant it. People like that don't apologize. They double down." She was right. Mom sent a letter that arrived on day 23, not to me directly, but addressed to the occupant at my address, as if I'd become a stranger. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. She wrote about how hurt she was, how she'd sacrificed everything for me as a child, how she couldn't believe her own daughter would betray her like this. Not one word of acknowledgement about the fraud, not one hint of apology. Instead, she positioned herself as the wounded party, generous and misunderstood, victimized by my cruelty. The last line gutted me. "I always knew you had a cold heart, Linda. Your father saw it too, before he died. We just hoped you'd grow out of it." I read that line 10 times, each reading like a fresh cut. Was it true? Had Dad thought I was cold? Or was this just another lie, crafted to hurt me where I was most vulnerable? I called Sarah, voice shaking as I read the letter aloud. "That's evil," she said flatly. "Linda, she's trying to make you doubt yourself. Don't let her." "But what if she's right? What if I am cold? I'm having my own mother prosecuted." "No, you're holding her accountable. There's a difference." Sarah's voice was firm. "And using your dead father to manipulate you? That's sick. She knows exactly what she's doing." Day 28. Mom's deadline to move out. A process server arrived at my door. Mom was suing me for unlawful eviction and emotional distress. The papers claimed I'd kicked her out without cause, that she'd been a model tenant, that my actions had caused her severe psychological harm. I sat on my porch steps and laughed. Actual hysterical laughter, the kind that borders on sobbing. A model tenant. The woman who'd stolen my identity was suing me for emotional distress. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, who I'd hired to handle the fraud case, wasn't amused when I called her. "She's trying to mud the waters," Patricia explained. "Make herself look like the victim in court. It's a common tactic. Don't worry, we'll handle it." "How much is this going to cost me?" "More than it should. But Linda, you can't back down now. If you do, she wins. She gets away with it, and she'll know she can do it again. She already destroyed my credit. What else can she take? Your house, your retirement, your dignity. People like this don't stop until they're forced to stop." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I focused on the only thing I could control, rebuilding my credit from the ground up. The fraud claims had cleared some accounts, but my score was still in the low 500s. I opened a secured credit card with a $500 deposit, the kind of card you give teenagers learning about money. At 67, I was starting over like I was 18 again. I set it up to auto-pay a tiny subscription service each month, just enough to show activity without risk. Netflix. $9.99 a month, automatically cleared from my checking. The customer service representative who helped me set it up was probably in her 20s. "That's really smart," she said cheerfully. "Keeping it low and auto-paid means you can't forget or overspend." "Thanks," I managed, swallowing my humiliation. Small charges, automatic clearance, zero chance of missing a payment or going into debt. It felt pathetic and necessary in equal measure. This was my life now, rebuilding 50 years of financial history one Netflix subscription at a time. Carol showed up at my house on day 32, using a key she apparently still had. I came home from the grocery store to find her in my living room going through my papers. "What are you doing?" I demanded, setting down my bags. She didn't even look guilty. "Making sure you're actually going through with this insanity. Linda, you have to drop the charges. Mom is falling apart. Get out of my house, now. This is family business. You don't get to shut me out." I pulled out my phone, Leave or I call the police. You'd really do that? Call the police? Cops on your own sister? Watch me. She snatched up her purse, face twisted with rage. You're going to die alone, you know? That, when you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you, we'll all remember this. We'll remember how you destroyed this family over money. I didn't destroy anything. Mom did. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. Same difference. She headed for the door, then turned back. And just so you know, Michael's kids, your grandchildren, they're never going to know you. We'll make sure of that. The door slammed. I stood there, grocery bags still in hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. My grandchildren. Emma was 7. Jacob was 5. I had pictures of them on my fridge, sent holiday cards with money tucked inside, called on their birthdays. They'd grow up thinking I was the villain, if they thought of me at all. I put away the groceries, mechanically, moving through the familiar motions while my mind spun. Was Carol right? Was I destroying my family? Should I just drop the charges, let Mom off the hook, pretend none of this happened? But then what? She'd know she could get away with it. She'd do it again, or do something worse, and I'd spend the rest of my life as her safety net and her victim. No, Patricia was right. If I backed down now, she won, and I'd lose more than my credit score. I'd lose myself. The court date arrived on a cold Thursday morning in November. I dressed carefully, conservative skirt and blazer, pearl earrings Dad had given me for my 50th birthday. Patricia met me at the courthouse steps. Ready? She asked. No, but let's do it anyway. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling and fluorescent lights, and a tired-looking judge who'd probably heard worse things before breakfast. Mom sat on the opposite side, with her lawyer, a slick young man in an expensive suit. She dressed for sympathy. Cardigan, sensible shoes, her hair done up in that grandmotherly style she'd perfected. Carol was there too, and Michael. He must have flown in from Seattle. They wouldn't look at me. The proceedings were technical, boring, until the judge asked Mom to explain her side. She stood, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Your Honor, my daughter and I had a disagreement about household expenses. I was living with her, helping with chores and cooking, and I may have used her credit occasionally for joint household purchases. I always intended to pay her back. But she became paranoid and accused me of stealing. She threw me out without warning, and now she's trying to have me arrested for helping with groceries. It was such a perfect lie, delivered with such wounded dignity, that for a moment I wondered if anyone would believe me over her. Patricia stood. Your Honor, if I may submit evidence to the contrary? She laid out the documentation. 17 accounts. Charges at high-end department stores. Car repairs for a vehicle I didn't own. Hotel stays in cities I'd never visited. A pattern spanning 3 years, thousands of dollars, all using my information. The judge's expression shifted as he reviewed the papers. Mrs. Patterson, Sr., these don't look like grocery store purchases. Mom's lawyer jumped in with procedural arguments, but the damage was done. The judge's face had gone from neutral to skeptical. I'm ordering a continuance, he finally said. But Mrs.
Patterson Sr., I strongly suggest you get your story straight before we reconvene, because if the evidence supports what I'm seeing here, you're looking at serious criminal charges, not a family dispute. We filed out of the courtroom in tense silence. Carol caught up to me in the hallway. Are you happy now? She hissed. You embarrassed her in front of everyone. She embarrassed herself. I just told the truth. The truth? You made her look like a criminal. Carol, she is a criminal. That's what identity theft is. A crime. Michael appeared at Carol's shoulder. Mom, this has gone far enough. Just drop it, please. The pleading in his voice almost broke me. This was my son, my baby boy, who I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for. And he was asking me to let myself be victimized because it was uncomfortable for him to face what his grandmother had done.
I can't, I said quietly. If I do, she'll never stop, and you'll never understand that what she did was wrong. What's wrong is tearing apart the family. Michael's jaw was set, stubborn, just like his father's used to be. But fine, if this is your choice, then I'm making mine. Don't call me, don't visit. You're not welcome in our lives anymore. He turned and walked away. Carol followed. Mom was already gone, spirited away by her lawyer. I stood in that courthouse hallway, watching my family disappear, and felt strangely calm. Patricia touched my elbow. You okay? I don't know. Ask me in a year. The criminal trial took 4 more months. 4 months of depositions, document reviews, and endless waiting. The prosecutor assigned to the case was efficient and dispassionate. This was routine for her, just another fraud case in a system overwhelmed with them. The good news is the evidence is overwhelming, she told me. The bad news is your mother's age and lack of criminal history will probably keep her out of prison. She'll likely get probation and restitution orders. So she won't face real consequences? Oh, she'll face consequences. Felony conviction, probation, monitored finances, restitution payments. Her life will be significantly harder. It just won't involve jail time. That should have felt like a loss, but it didn't. I didn't want to see Mom in prison. I just wanted her to stop. I wanted the system to force her to acknowledge what she'd done and make it right. The trial itself was anticlimactic. Mom pled no contest on her lawyer's advice. The judge sentenced her to 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and ordered her to pay full restitution for the fraudulent charges, almost $40,000, to be paid at $200 a month. She'd be paying me back for the rest of her life. Carol and Michael didn't attend. I sat alone in the courtroom gallery, watching Mom's face as the sentence was read. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. For the first time since this started, she looked her age. When it was over, she glanced back at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. I waited for something, recognition maybe, or remorse, but her expression was flat, unreadable. Then she turned and left with her lawyer. That was the last time I saw her. Over the following months, my credit score began its slow climb. The fraud markers were removed, the false accounts closed. I made my tiny Netflix payment every month, automatic and safe. Added a small utility bill to the autopay. Methodical, patient, rebuilding one careful brick at a time. Sarah invited me to join her book club. Ruth introduced me to her church group, different from my old congregation. I started volunteering at the library, helping seniors navigate technology, teaching again, in a way. Slowly, quietly, I built a new life. The restitution checks arrived every month, $200 exactly, like clockwork. I didn't cash them at first. They sat in a drawer, a paper trail of her obligation. But eventually, I started depositing them. Not because I needed the money, but because letting them pile up felt like letting her off the hook. A year and a half after the trial, I got a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, young, uncertain. Is this Linda Patterson? Yes. This is Amanda Rodriguez. Detective Rodriguez is my father. He asked me to call you. About your mother. My heart stopped. Is she okay? She had a stroke. She's at Miami General. It's serious. I thanked her and hung up. Stared at my phone for a long moment. Then I called Carol. She's asking for you, Carol said, her voice hoarse. Linda, please, she might not make it. I drove to Miami that afternoon. 4 hours of highway, my mind blank and racing by turns. The hospital was a maze of corridors and antiseptic smells. Carol met me at the ICU entrance, looking haggard. Room 412, she said. They've got her stabilized, but the next 24 hours are critical. I walked in alone. Mom was in the bed, tubes and monitors everywhere. Her face was slack on one side. She looked impossibly frail. Her good eye tracked to me. Her mouth worked, trying to form words. I moved closer. Sorry, she managed. Just that one word, slurred but unmistakable. I stood there, looking down at this woman who'd given me life and then tried to destroy it, feeling nothing and everything at once. I know, I said finally. I stayed for an hour, sitting in the chair by her bed. We didn't speak again. When the nurse came to check her vitals, I stood to leave. At the door, I looked back one last time. Her eye was closed. The monitors beeped steadily, and I realized something. I forgave her. Not because she'd earned it or because she deserved it, but because carrying the anger was too heavy, and I was tired. Mom survived the stroke, but never fully recovered. She moved to a nursing facility, Carol handling the arrangements. I visited once a month, never staying long. We were cordial, distant, like acquaintances rather than family. Michael sent me a card on my 70th birthday. Just happy birthday and his signature. No phone call, no visit. But it was something. My credit score hit 700 on a Tuesday afternoon 2 years after that courtroom scene. I checked it on my phone while sitting in Sarah's garden, drinking iced tea and complaining about the heat. When I saw the number, I started crying. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, alarmed. "Nothing," I said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Absolutely nothing. Everything's right." I rebuilt it, all of it. My credit, my life, my sense of self. Not the way I'd planned, not with the family I'd hoped to have around me, but I did it, and I was free. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have pressed charges against your own mother, knowing it might cost you your relationship with your entire family?